You know, during this time, there are a lot of issues that people are dealing with, and one of them that, or several of them probably kind of rolled into one, are legal issues. Have to do with bankruptcy. It might have to do with paying child support. So many different things. It may, unfortunately, we hear the divorce rate is probably going to jump dramatically. So we wanted to talk to a professional about this. So I brought in my personal attorney, Tina Seymour, Demerin, who was Seymour Law Firm. How are you?
Doing great. Ready for my hairdresser to get back. Brittany, I'm going to be seeing you when this is over, darling, because my roots have got to get touched up, honey.
So let's talk about some of these things. First off, talk about financial protection.
Well, the biggest issue a lot of people are dealing with coronavirus is the fact that personally and professionally there's an interruption of income. So one of the associate that works with me at my law firm, Bill, taped an earlier segment with Shop South talking about bankruptcy.
That was a few weeks ago.
Business interruption insurance, key man insurance. What I'm looking at is from the personal standpoint, how to protect yourself in relationships and in your assets that you bring into the marriage that you may inherit during the marriage or the relationship, and to make sure that that is secure throughout your relationship, because unfortunately marriages end.
Yeah, oh, they do, and this time right now, some things. This is really putting a test on everyone because you're at home together more so. You don't have the that option of being out or whatever. My wife is still working. I'm working from home, but I've in and out. So the only time we're really together is in the evening time and more first thing in the morning, and then on the weekend. So she hadn't killed me yet. But a lot of families, unfortunately, they cannot handle that stress. So they may end up turning to legal action against one another. Sadly enough.
Well, and I always tell people that come in and talk to me about relationships when we're talking about prenuptial agreements, the things that make you attracted to a person may end up being the ones that drive you crazy later. Those cute little idiosyncrasies can become annoying habits later. And when you're closed up in a tight space and you add in children, you add in stress, you add in money issues, you add in health issues, or anything in a tight environment, it's a pressure cooker. And that's going to really put the relationship to a test. Fighting and bickering is part of it. But if there are already serious underlying reasons for you to fight, those are going to escalate, and unfortunately they can translate into not just a fight, but domestic violence, violence against your children or your spouse. That's really what I'm worried about and what we've been dealing with. The courts are closed more or less throughout this coronavirus issue, but emergency hearings are being held. I've sat on the front steps with Judge Harris and Judge Hasbrook in Jackson County, and everybody sat 6 feet apart for emergency custody hearings, domestic violence issues, and I was with a couple of judges over in Biloxi before it really shut down for protective orders through the municipal court.
Now, if someone does come in, decide this isn't going to work, I just want to get divorced, you recommend they don't just up and walk away?
By the time you get to the end of the marriage, you're done. And by the time you're ready to pull the trigger, you may have thought about it in the past, but when you make that final decision.
And she didn't mean literally to pull the trigger.
No.
You might feel that way, but no.
Making the decision.
Right.
When you get to the point where you make that decision, then you want it over. You want to move on with your life, and sometimes you get premature in your decision making. There's a 60-day cooling off period that gives you the time to think, but even during that 60 days, you're still highly emotional. That's why you need someone to be an advocate for you. Talk to an attorney. Make sure that you have someone who is cool, level-headed, and not involved in the relationship help you make those decisions. So many times I see husbands and wives come in and say, just give everything to them, I just want out. And that's not smart, because you can't go back and revisit property settlement agreements between spouses unless there's fraud or they fail to disclose assets. You can always revisit child custody and child support, but once you sign that agreement between the spouses, it's going to be hard to appeal. It's going to be hard to get back.
What if your ex-spouse is not holding up to their part of the agreement?
Well, then you call an attorney and you file for contempt. You can go back and enforce the agreement. That property settlement agreement, those child custody and support agreements, they're contracts. And if it's been handed down by a judge or you've agreed to do it, then you can go in and you can enforce it in a court. So instead of trying to handle it on your own or just saying, it's really not that much money, talk to an attorney, because you can also pursue legal fees against your spouse for their failure to keep up their part of the contract.
There's a lot of little things that people might not think about at the time, but you need to think about, I guess, removing your spouse from bank accounts, deeds,
yes.
things like that.
I've had several probates where we started going through the assets when someone dies and finding ex-spouses on life insurance policies, or they're still named as a beneficiary on a bank account, or they're still named as a retirement beneficiary. You need to go through, and if you're going to have a clean slate, walk through that with an asset review list with an estate planning attorney, so they know exactly what you have, and we can make sure your beneficiaries are updated.
Well, you mentioned, I've got just a couple of minutes left. Talk about estate planning, how important it is.
I always say if you're over 18 and you have clothes on your back, you need at a minimum a will package. That is a will. That's a contract between you and the judge, letting them know what you want when you die. A will has to be probated in order for it to be effective, but not every person has to go through the probate process in the courts. You can set up your assets to automatically transfer upon your death. A good estate planning attorney can walk you through that and save your family thousands when you die. Powers of attorney, both financial and medical, will help protect you during your lifetime because you're allowing someone to step into your shoes and make decisions both medically, financially, and legally for you if you're unable to do so.
Now, and it's also guardians of children. One of the things too, in a sad event that maybe both parents lose their life at one time or whatever, it happens, unfortunately. You got to be sure that you've got a guardian picked out.
It's imperative that you sit down with your spouse, and I have a checklist that says, how do I choose a guardian for my child? I hand that out free during our consultation. I want you and your spouse to sit down. Don't find the person with the most money in your family. Find the person who has similar values, who goes to the same church as you do, who has the same values about education and discipline. Do they have kids? Do those kids get along with your kids? And if it's forced to go to court and there's a dispute, I always say it's the person who looks, smells, and acts and talks the best in court. Maybe not the person that you would want to raise your child, who's going to end up over their assets and over their raising. That's when they put up the
best facade.
Exactly, and we all know that people can clean up really great for court, but in real life, that's not how they act and that's not how they live.
See it on TV all the time.
Every day, every day.
Tina, thank you so much for being here with us today and enlightening everybody on this, and I know there's so much more. They're probably sitting there watching this and thinking, what about this, what about this, what about this? The thing to do is just call your office. Yes. Phone number's on your screen. Yes. Call your office.
The first 30 minutes are free. we want to sit down and talk to you so you can have a professional opinion before you make that move.
Definitely. Thanks, Tina. Good to
Thank
see
you.
As always. Anyways, if you'd like some more information, Seymour Law Firm. They're located on Seymour Lane, right off of Lemoyne in Ocean Springs.